I never thought I'd learn how to breathe again. Not really. Not after 15 years of holding myself together with shallow breaths and wrapped-up mornings pretending the world had done. Tea shrunk inside me. But that summer morning, the one that changed everything, came slowly, like sunlight through drawn curtains, gentle and patient. And with it came the possibility of reconnecting with my son. I want you to imagine something with me for a moment. An old oak tree, its branches sprawling wide, and at its base, a simple wooden bench weathered by decades of sun and rain. That bench became sacred to me, not because it was special, but because it was the place where I almost lost hope, and where I found it again. You see, 15 years before that morning, I lost touch with my son, Daniel. Life, with all its intricacies, had pulled us apart. It wasn't a dramatic shouting match or a single moment of hurt. It was more like quiet waves scraping at the shore, day after day, until one year dissolved into the next. By the time I realized how far we drifted, it felt like we were on opposite ends of the world, emotionally and geographically. I could tell you that I handled it with grace and acceptance, that I tucked away the pain like a neatly folded blanket stored on a top shelf. But that wouldn't be true. What I remember most from those years was how every goodbye echoed in my chest, a small ache that never fully healed. Some days it felt like the ache was all that kept me going. Still, life marched on. I kept busy volunteer groups, book clubs, gardening classes, senior fitness sessions, anything to fill the silence. I learned how to plant roses that bloomed in vibrant reds and pinks. I mastered how to make the perfect apple pie. But no matter how full my calendar was, there was always this hollow space in the center of me where I wished, quietly, that I could talk to Daniel again. Then, one morning in early June, I found an envelope in my mailbox that was thicker than the usual stack of coupons. My name was written in a hand I hadn't seen in years. Inside was a letter, carefully folded, written in ink that smudged ever so slightly with emotion. "Hi, Mom, I would like to see you again." Nothing in me prepared for that moment. Not the years of rehearsed comebacks or mornings spent convincing myself I was fine. I just stood there holding the letter like it was both the answer and the question. For days, I didn't know what to do. I reread the letter until the edges softened. I walked under the old oak tree in the park near my home, sat on the bench, and stared at the shifting shadows on the grass. I cried a little, not loud sobs, just quiet, weighty tears that felt more like a release than pain. It was as if I was letting go of not just 15 years, but of the fear that I'd never have a second chance. The hardest part wasn't the waiting. It wasn't the memories or the wonder of what could have been. It was figuring out how to begin again when the first chapter had closed so painfully long ago. I wrote back, kept the words simple, warm, and hopeful. I told him I had kept his old baseball glove in a cedar box, just as he left it, and that it still smelled faintly of grass and sunshine. I invited him to visit me at the park under the oak tree. I chose the bench beneath the sprawling branches because it felt like neutral ground, familiar, grounded, and steady. Their time seemed to stretch and soften. I wanted our conversation to start in a place that felt peaceful, without judgment or past regrets looming in the air. The day Daniel came, the sky was the color of promise, light blue streaked with hints of summer warmth. I remember seeing him from a distance, older, taller, his hair a bit shorter than my memories, but there he was. And suddenly, everything I had rehearsed fell away like leaves in the wind. We started with small, human moments, a nod, a shy smile, an awkward wave that turned into a laughter neither of us expected. It surprised me how natural it felt, like our connection was hiding beneath the surface all those years, waiting just for the right moment to be seen again. We sat for a long time talking about the weather, the roses in my garden, and the dog that I would sometimes take on long walks. Then he asked about his father. I paused because it was something I always avoided, but this time I answered with honesty and calm. I told him that people make mistakes, that life curves in ways we don't plan for, that sometimes we lose our way. I didn't try to explain it all with big words or excuses. Just simple truth. Daniel listened as the oak leaves rustled above us, as if nature itself was urging us forward. And then he said something I will never forget. "I want to build something new with you." Mom, in that moment, I understood that healing isn't about erasing time or pretending the hurt didn't exist. We met many times after that, beneath the oak tree and then at my kitchen table. And later for long afternoon walks. Sometimes we talked, and sometimes we just walked, peace settling comfortably between us like an old friend. I saw slow laughter return to his eyes, the kind of laughter that feels like sunlight sliding across your shoulder. He told me about his life, the mistakes he made, the lessons he learned, the moments that taught him what truly matters. Each story was a building block, a brick in the new foundation we were quietly creating. There were times when old emotions, fear, regret, hope, tangled up in ways that made us both pause and breathe a little deeper. But every time we showed up again, we stitched another thread in the tapestry of understanding. One day, as we sat on that bench under the oak tree, Daniel reached out and squeezed my hand. I looked at him, at the man he had become, and I felt an overwhelming surge of love, not the kind that erases the past, but the kind that honors it and allows something new to grow. If you're rereading this, if you re someone who carries an ache from a far-off goodbye, a lost opportunity, or years of silence, I want you to hold on to this. Reconnection is not about erasing time. It's about building bridges made of honesty, compassion, and courage. It doesn't matter how many years have passed. What matters is the willingness to take that first step, even if your heart feels fragile, even if your breath feels shallow. Hope doesn't always roar. Sometimes it whispers. And that the willingness to hope and to show up is the most beautiful beginning there is.